Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, I'm here in Strasbourg, in the European Parliament, where today there was a big debate ahead of this vital summit that takes place in Brussels next week, next Thursday evening. Theresa May will be there, as will the heads of government of 27 other countries, and the real bosses will be there as well. And the real bosses all spoke today. Juncker, Barnier, they were all up there. None of them, of course, elected, but what's that got to do with it? And there I was this morning. I found myself sitting just 4 feet away from EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker, who, by the way, when I came in this morning, gave me a big handshake and a big smile. I said, "How are you getting on, Jean-Claude?" He said, "Despite you, I think okay." But here's what he had to say this morning in the chamber in Strasbourg.
On the 29th of March 2019, at midnight, the United Kingdom will have left the European Union.
Then we'll have to come when you will regret your decision.
I have to say I did enjoy that. As you may have guessed, those cheers and laughter were from Eurosceptic UKIPers and from some Conservatives as well. So that's Juncker today, laying it down on the line. You are making a catastrophic mistake. You will live to regret it, and you will come crawling back to us on your hands and knees, begging to rejoin our glorious, everlasting union. Well, I couldn't resist to remind them that we wouldn't have any regrets at all, because freed from this, we'd have more flexibility to do our own deals.
Because in this USA dispute, we now find ourselves trapped, impotent, unable to act. We need to be free. We voted Brexit. We voted to make our own trade policy, our own trade decisions. We could do a deal with America in 48 hours. We need to act. Yes, well, just yesterday, the Trump administration were describing us as their best ally in the world. Mrs. May, we did not vote for a transition period. We voted to leave this organisation. We voted to leave the customs union. We voted to leave the single market. So please, Mrs. May, at this summit next week, do what Trump has done. Stand strong against the European Commission, against the unelected bullies.
Well, don't they just love me? Every time I get up, they seem to try and shout me down. But hey, I just keep going. I do fundamentally object and worry about this transition period. We are supposed to be leaving the European Union on the 29th of March next year, but if we sign up for transition, would it really make much difference? Well, the last speaker in this debate today, and perhaps really the key man when it comes to Brexit on this side of the channel, is, of course, the European Union's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier. And he used that chance this morning to explain to us what transition actually meant.
We accept, the European leaders, you have accepted the request of the UK government presented by Theresa May to include a period of transition in the withdrawal agreement. And clearly, within this short transition period, respecting Article 50, all the rules of the Union will apply without any distinction. A citizen who arrives, for example, during the period of transition, Mrs. Bresso mentioned this, should benefit from the same rights as a citizen who arrived before the day of Brexit.
So, what he's saying is very simple. Mrs. May, you're coming to meet all of us in Brussels next Thursday evening for a chat followed by dinner, and what we are expecting you to do during this transition period is to be signed up to all the existing rules of the European Union, all the new rules it makes during that period, though you won't be in the room and can't have a say and can't have a vote, and you'll go on paying to be part of it, and, just to put the icing on the cake, open door immigration will continue, with EU citizens free to come to Britain with all of their rights, even though we will apparently have left the European Union. That is what our Prime Minister is expected to agree to next week. And I want to know how you feel about that. If you think, like me, this is absolutely typical of these bully boys. Call me on 0345 6060 973, or maybe you think they're entirely justified and we have no choice but to meet all of their demands, in which case text to 84850, and maybe, just maybe, you have some suggestions for what Mrs May should say in return to them next Thursday when she's there in that building having dinner with them in Brussels, in which case tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. Watch me on Facebook. I'm live from Strasbourg inside the belly of the beast. It seems to me, of course the referendum, of course the Brexit vote was about independence. It was about breaking free of these institutions. It was about making our own laws. But one of the absolutely crucial reasons people voted Brexit, and the turnout was as high as it was, is people wanted to take back control of our borders. They'd had enough of open-door immigration. And interestingly, of many that voted Remain, many of them were very concerned about open-door immigration, but their economic fears outweighed that and they voted to stay. I just don't see how Mrs May can sign up to this next week, unless, of course, we think that the immigration debate has now disappeared and suddenly no one cares. Well, let's find out what you think. Let's go to Stoke-on-Trent. Let's talk to Sam, a first-time caller to this show. Good evening, Sam.
Good evening, Nigel.
So, I mean, what do you make of Barnier, Juncker? Are they being reasonable, or is my view they're being wholly unreasonable the right one?
I think it's highly illuminating. These unelected bureaucrats are not beholden to anyone. They're not accountable to anyone, so they want to punish us. They're not like the people, like the politicians who represent the member states who've got to answer to people. They'll still get the 16% of fat pensions. Juncker can get wrecked after dinner time. They just don't care. And I think May needs to grow a backbone and say, hang on, we are your second biggest payer, and Italy's 130% debt to GDP ratio. The ECB's been printing money like monopoly money. May needs to grow a spine, and if she signs up to that and accepts new rules, it's insane. It's like I'm going home, but no, I'm going to walk deeper into the quicksand. And if they think they can pull this off, I mean, I'm just hoping you're going to get back in, Nigel, because I think it's just betraying us, to be honest.
Well, Sam, whatever I do in politics, I'm not going to be Prime Minister, and I'm not going to be there next Thursday. So, the onus is very much on her. And she, of course, Sam, has huge pressure on her. She's worried about parliamentary numbers. She's being, lobbied like crazy by the big investment banks, by the big multinationals, who are saying, we must have more time. We must have more time. And in a sense, okay, if we absolutely did need more time, I might understand the argument. But what basically Juncker and Barnier are saying is you will have everything you've got now without any say at all. And Sam, the problem is, I'm not going to feel on the 30th of March next year like we've left the European Union.
Now, if she accepts that, she souls down the river, especially the new rules. It's absurd on its face. So business is saying we need to get ready. So how do you get ready? By taking on more new rules. How would you get ready? By going, like I say, walking farther into the quicksand. And I don't buy all this. It's always the same. The big corporates, the crony capitalist masters, a decent business can adapt, can thrive in any environment. We've had plenty of time. I've heard you on LBC before say, 2016 we voted to leave. Do you know what this is, I think, Nigel? This is the death of Brexit by 1,000 cuts. And I think I've heard people say on the show as well about civil disobedience. And I tell you, we, on Stoke-on-Trent, we've got a Conservative MP without that much want to get out of the EU. Do you know how long it's been since? I don't think Stoke's ever had a Conservative MP, to be honest.
Not for a long time, certainly. Not for 100 years, I'm sure.
Yeah, so that's how committed we are. I mean, people around here vehemently hate the Conservatives. Just, the old saying, put a rosette on a donkey, a Labour rosette on a donkey, and I'll get voted.
So Sam, do you think,
well, not now, because we want
if people feel betrayed, do you think there could be a real backlash in this country?
Mate, I'm telling you, I'll be involved in it, and I'm not stupid, because I know what they'll do, and I think that But it's all right for people like Soros. He's a Nazi collaborator, mate. 60 Minutes in America got an interview with him. He went round with a protector and rounded up his fellow Jews and took all the possessions and said he's not bothered about it.
Well, he was a minor. Sam, I'm not a Soros fan, but he was a minor at the time, and you could say that his adopted father was involved in that. And Soros may have seen all of that, but hey, he is part. That aside, he is part of, as I see it, the big global elite trying to overthrow and overturn Brexit. And Sam, you're angry about it. All I would say to you is that if you are at some point moved to direct action, please, Sam, promise me it'll be peaceful.
Yeah, of course it will be, mate. Yeah, because at the end of the day, I just think people need to wake up and realise what's at stake. And I mean, make it Britain greater than because we're being lied to. We're being lied to, and we're being stalled. I don't trust May as far as I can throw it. That was the worst election campaign I've ever seen, and she picked that time to suddenly threaten to scare old people about the retirement. I find that very suspect.
Well, that's politics. That's politics. But either way, Sam, she misjudged it horrendously. Apparently egged on by David Davis. Sam, I thank you. Well, Sam there, reflecting a view that I sense is being held by a growing number of people. Their frustration, their impatience with Brexit is beginning to turn to anger. Now, look, I'm all for passion, I'm all for belief, but I've never, ever been for, breaking the law or violent disorder. And I would hate to see us fall into that category, those of us that have fought and worked for Brexit. Simon disagrees on Facebook. He says, we help write the rules. They are not trying to bully us. They are just telling us we need to follow the rules that we help to write. Simon, I don't think whatever you see in the European treaties or the wording of Article 50 explains the behaviour of Juncker or Barnier or Martin Selmayr, the new big civil servant in charge of the European Commission. They were all there today, as was Mr. Timmermans, their deputy, and I don't think there's anything in the rules that allow them to treat us in this way. In fact, in their treaties, they say they should cooperate and work as well as they can with their neighbours. I don't feel today in Strasbourg we got much of that, and Mrs May has a very big challenge next Thursday. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC. It's now 7:15. The big bosses of the European Union were there, cheek by jowl with me this morning, telling us that the transition period will mean nothing changes, we accept new rules, and the free movement of people will continue. Is the Prime Minister really going to sign up to all of that next Thursday in Brussels? We will see. I think it's an outrageous idea, but I'm keen to hear from you on 0345 6060973. But following up on last night's debate about Russia and events in Salisbury. So just to confirm, Russia has been given a midnight deadline by Prime Minister Theresa May to explain why a Russian-made nerve agent was used in the attack in Salisbury on former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia. But Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov described claims of Russian involvement as rubbish and said that Russia had been refused access to the nerve agent. So the argument here is he's saying, give us some of it because we'd like to test it too. And we're saying, no, we're not going to give you any. The UK ambassador to Russia, Laurie Bristow, has met the Russian Deputy Foreign Minister in Moscow. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has said the United States is with the UK all the way over the poisoning of Sergei Skripal and his daughter in Salisbury. Downing Street confirmed there was a phone call with the Prime Minister today, and Trump agreed that the Russian government must provide unambiguous answers as to how this nerve agent came to be used. So another really big challenge for the Prime Minister here. Are the Russians going to meet this deadline and give a list of explanations? I don't think there's a cat's chance in hell of them doing it. And we've debated over the last week, maybe the one big sanction is we could withdraw our team from the World Cup football, which takes place in June in Russia. Now, the Daily Mail today led with a big headline on that. Maybe, folks, I've got this completely and utterly wrong, but I think if we were to withdraw our team from the World Cup, I think millions of people in Britain would be very, very angry indeed. But let me know, would it be right to withdraw our football team from the World Cup in the light of all of this? And please tweet Farage and LBC at LBC. I'll read some of your answers out. Moving swiftly on to Durham, to Teng. Teng, we've heard Juncker, we've heard Barnier. How do you feel about their tone of language today?
Hi, Nigel. First of all, I have to say, as a Labour Brexiteer, well done for your performance today in the European Parliament. And frankly,
that's sweet of you.
Smith is just a joke. He's just basically a hypocrite. Okay, now moving back to the language that trio used. I think the reason is very simple. Why they are speaking in such terms is because our political leaders are too weak. You look at Theresa May; she is basically conceding every damn thing to Juncker, to Barnier, to Verhofstadt. You look at Jeremy Corbyn signing up Labour to the customs union, and you look at Vince Cable saying stuff about white nostalgia for Brexit. I mean, this such weak pro-Remain language.
Really, Teng, don't you think? I mean, Vince Cable's a very decent, Sir Vince Cable is a very decent, nice man. And I like him on a personal level. I've known him 20 years. I like him, and I'd cross the street to say hello. But don't you think with that comment at the weekend, actually he was being really insulting to Brexit voters?
It was distasteful. It was very, very distasteful. It was distasteful.
So Teng, given all of this, and by the way, anyone that wants to see mine, thank you for praising it. If you want to see my speech in the European Parliament today, go to YouTube. It's there. And I did say to both Juncker and Barnier and Selmayr, the big civil servant, I did say the problem with the European Commission is that it is power without accountability. But Teng,
Nigel, it is.
Well, that's absolutely how I feel, because we can't vote for these people, we can't remove them. But Teng, I mean, Mrs May, and I'm trying to be fair here to her, she's got problems with parliamentary numbers. She's got divisions. I mean, 15 of her own cabinet were Remainers, and frankly, Teng, I think they still are really Remainers. What does she do in the face of this? What do you as a Labour Brexiteer, what do you want to see her do next Thursday?
Well, I want Theresa May to start playing hardball. She has to play hardball. If not, these unelected bureaucrats, Mr. Juncker, Barnier, Verhofstadt, they are just only going to continue taking advantage of Britain. And
yes, and I tell you,
that deal.
No, Teng, I think a lot of people would agree with that. And I tell you what, they, by the way, are not speaking from a position of strength. They are petrified of the Italian election results. And Barnier was saying today, we have to do this because we must preserve our union and preserve our single market. And I'll tell you what, Teng, when people start using words like preserve, they're doing it because they fear it may just disappear. Teng, I thank you very much indeed for your call. Simon says on Facebook, Colleen says on Facebook, we will leave on the 29th of March. What worries me is after that, what sort of deal May will make and how long a transition period will last. Out means out on the 29th of March. Well, Colin, I think that, and I spoke today very strongly against this transition phase, and particularly a transition phase on the terms that are being, proposed by the big bosses over here. Andrew lives in Southend-on-Sea. He's a first-time caller to this show. You're very welcome, Andrew. Good evening.
Good evening to you, Nigel. And can I first at least say it's an honour to speak to you, and I think history will see you as the man who brought about a great change for this country in taking us out of the European Union. Going back to what has been said by Barnier and Juncker, I don't want to be rude, but I would just...
I said that once in this Parliament, Andrew. I said to Mr Van Rompuy...
we're off, and we're going to find our own way in the world, and I think Theresa May needs to be robust with them, like she's been towards the Russians in her speech she made last night. And I also just want to agree with a caller two back, I think it was. I think the Brexiteers, we need to see some show of strength for Brexit, and we need to see it on the streets. I'm not advocating any violence or anything like that, but I think if we had a show of strength on the streets, somebody who could organise that in a peaceful fashion, I think that would give a little shot in the arm to Theresa May. She can go then and say, look, this is what our people want, and we're going to deliver on that. But at the moment, Nigel, I just see us being pushed around and bullied and manipulated and told what to do, not just by the European Union, but by our own leaders of this country and other people who are so entrenched in Europe. Why don't they go and live there then?
Andrew, do you think that the falling confidence we've had in our political figures over the last couple of decades, do you think it's worsening over these months because Brexit's not being delivered as people see fit?
Well, I think it is, Nigel. You know, I mean, I've got no political allegiance to anybody. I voted to come out. I voted for UKIP when they were when you first sort of got going, when you were in charge. I've got no political allegiance to anybody, really. I just want to see the best of my country, and I don't care who's going to deliver on that. But they've got no sort of balls about them today. The leaders, they're all after their own feather in their own nest, and what the future's going to be for them, not for what the future's going to be for the country and for the people in generations to come. You know, I mean, I'm 58. I've got a couple of daughters, granddaughter. And I want to see this country great again, like it used to be years ago. But since we were treated in such a shameful fashion by Edward Heath, who's done more damage to this country than Hitler did in the last war, long term, and what he's done to the...
That's pushing it a bit, Andrew, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's pushing it a bit, because, I mean, Hitler wanted...
But I'll tell you what, I get quite passionate about it, and we have damaged this country over many, many years. And
let me ask you, Andrew, one question.
Yes.
Do you believe that Brexit will make us great again?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. We've got to believe in it, though, and the Remainers have got to believe in it. You know, we've had the vote. I know they've lost. And I know.
And our leaders, Andrew, our leaders have to believe in it. And I'm not sure the Prime Minister is doing any more than, as she sees it, her duty.
Well, I think she needs to just be a little bit more robust and a little bit more assertive.
Yeah, no, well... Andrew, we'll find out next week. Got to love you and leave you. I'm going to go to John in Boston. John, what do you make of it all?
Hello, Nigel.
Good
in
evening.
My opinion, if she signs up to what they're asking for next Thursday, then we've been totally let down, which I've been half expecting ever since she became Prime Minister, and I've no faith in her at all.
Simple as that?
Yeah.
So what would you like to see happen, John? Would you like to see the Tory party remove her and get a different leader?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What, somebody that actually believes in Brexit?
Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Jacob Rees-Mogg.
He wants...
But John,
Brexit.
John, he's a backbencher. He's never held office of any kind at all. I mean, is Jacob Rees-Mogg really qualified?
I believe so, yes.
All right, well, I can't argue with that. You believe in it. John, thank you. And John thinks Theresa the Appeaser is not up to it. She's got to go. Well, you know what? She surprised me yesterday. She struck quite a strong tone in Parliament yesterday. You never know. That could have been simply practice for the big one in Brussels next Thursday. I'd like to think that. I'm not sure I believe in it. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It's now 7:30 and time. The big boys in Brussels today, here in the Parliament in Strasbourg, have been laying down the rules for what transition actually means. And it means no change. It means the continued free movement of people, no immigration controls. And I just wonder, well, certainly given the callers we've had so far tonight, that Mrs May find herself very out of touch with public opinion if that is what she signs up to. But before I go back to that, Donald Trump tonight has replaced Rex Tillerson as US Secretary of State. CIA Director Mike Pompeo will take up the role the president announced in, you've guessed it, a tweet. Mike Pompeo, Director of the CIA, will become our new Secretary of State. He will do a fantastic job. Trump also thanked Tillerson for his time working at the White House and went on to reveal he'd appointed Gina Haspel as Pompeo's successor, the first woman ever to take on that job of being the CIA director. Thank you to Rex Tillerson for his service. Gina Haspel will become the new director of the CIA and the first woman so chosen. Congratulations to all, Mr. Trump tweeted. And within the last hour, Rex Tillerson has given a press conference. Here's just a piece of what he said.
On behalf of the American people, with allies and with partners, I close by thanking all for the privilege of serving beside you for the last 14 months. Importantly, to the 300+ million Americans, thank you for your devotion to a free and open society, to acts of kindness towards one another, to honesty and the quiet hard work that you do every day to support this government with your tax dollars. All of us, we know, want to leave this place as a better place for the next generation. I'll now return to private life as a private citizen, as a proud American, proud of the opportunity I've had to serve my country. God bless all of you. God bless the American people. God bless America.
Quite a bit of emotion there, I thought, in Rex Tillerson's voice. A man that I've met, a man that I like, a man I thought that brought great dignity and decency to that job. A very successful businessman, chief executive of Exxon. He didn't need to do any of this. And I'm, in a way, a little bit sad to see him go. I think I think he's a class act, and don't expect to see some huge expose next week in the New York Times how I fell out with the president, because you won't. I'm an equally, I've met and liked Mike Pompeo too, but I just think, he was actually a very good steadying influence, I think, on that team. Why did he fall out? What was it all over? Well, I'm told on the inside that it is to do with North Korea, that Trump took a very, very bullish approach to North Korea with fire and fury. Tillerson didn't believe that was the right way to go, and hey, here it is. And at the end of the day, Trump may well soon have a meeting with Kim Jong-un. So a difference of styles, but more change at the White House, and I've no doubt more to come. Now, Anton, very thoughtfully, says to me on Facebook, "We don't want to be a member of your team anymore." He's quoting the British government position. "But we want to keep using your facilities and take part in decision-making. Is that not asking a little too much? Stay in or get out?" Anton, I can't really disagree with that. And the one thing that was being said in the chamber this morning again and again and again is that the UK position is somewhat unclear. And it is a bit unclear, isn't it? When, the Lancaster House speech says, "We're getting out, we're leaving, Farage was right all along." And then she goes to Florence and says, "Oh, we love the European, it's fantastic, this union. We want to be signed up to all your agencies and your arrest warrants and everything," whilst not being a member. And I think Anton is right. The one thing I really did agree today, they want a bit more clarity from the British government. And actually, I think they deserve that. That said, I do not support really at all the proposal that's being put by Juncker and Barnier. They're scared men, and they're scared because that Italian result is an absolute earthquake, which makes it even better that we go to a first-time caller in Milan. And it's Daniel. Good evening.
Hello, good evening, Nigel. How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing well. So Milan voted for the Lega, for the very Eurosceptic Lega, in huge numbers.
Well, yes. Let me say first that I'm not Italian. I just live here and work in Switzerland. Yeah, they voted for La Lega, but I don't think the Eurosceptic movement is that high in Italy either. I think, there's a lot of people that are not happy with current politics. There's a lot of unemployment, but really people are not Eurosceptic in Italy and staying in Greece, and they do want the euro for sure. This guy, Matteo Salvini, only said that one day after the elections, which is a clear indication that he didn't want to say it during the election campaign, because that wouldn't have given him much support, in my opinion.
Yeah, I met Salvini this morning, actually. I spoke to Salvini today, and I congratulated him on, the five-star movement getting 32.5% of the vote was stunning, but Salvini took the league from quite a low number to sort of 18% of the national vote. My sense, Daniel, is that Salvini's probably in reality as Eurosceptic as I am, but once you've got the euro, people are quite scared of making that change. What I would say, Daniel, to you is this: if you look at the under 40s in Italy, they're pretty disenchanted with everything, aren't they?
Well, they are, but I think it's more about disenchanting with traditional parties rather than disenchanted with the European Union. I don't think that the anti-European Union movement is that a big deal anywhere in Europe except for the UK. That's the only country where you guys could.
I have to say, I don't really agree with that. I think you've seen massive changes just this year in Austria, even a Eurosceptic movement now in Germany. But hey, that's by the by. Now, what do you think, Daniel, as an impartial observer, what do you think of the way the Brussels bosses are speaking to the United Kingdom? Do you think it's reasonable?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the the EU is just trying to stick to its norms, to its rules, whilst you guys, I think you're trying to get all the benefits of the EU without having any obligations. So, in my view, you would need to stay in British politics and demand from Theresa May, listen, Theresa, we voted to leave, and let's leave, because the EU really is telling you, okay, the door is open, you can leave whenever you want. So what are you still doing here after, a year and a half down the line from the referendum? You're still discussing God knows what, because the elections the election is clear. Either you're out and you have to have a hard border in Ireland, and you have to start renegotiating all your trade deals, or you stay in the single market and you avoid that hard border. But you can have it both ways.
So, Daniel, do you think Theresa May needs to be a bit more decisive one way or the other?
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I tell you what. On that,
I think you
and I agree.
You're going to be out. Yeah. I mean, and that's why, I like about you, that you openly say what you want. And Theresa May is saying one thing and the other the following day, and the same goes for Jeremy Corbyn. But my question to you, if I may say something.
Go on.
You said during the referendum campaign, you said that why couldn't we be like Switzerland or Norway, that are countries that that are not in the EU and they are super wealthy and they are doing really great. But you failed to mention that they are part of the single market, so they cannot reject any immigration coming from the EU.
Well, actually, both of them, Daniel, both of them have signed up for open door immigration, although I think both of them are going to reverse that before very long. And the other point, of course, is that Norway, though she is part of the single market, completely rejected the Postal Services Directive, believing that it would damage rural post offices, etc. So Norway does occasionally stand up and say, no, we're not going to do this. Daniel, my attitude was, I'd rather be Switzerland than an EU member. I'd rather be Norway and catch our own fish than an EU member. But I actually want us to be better than Norway and better than Switzerland. And I think we can do that, but only if we have leaders with self-confidence. Daniel, thanks ever so much for your call. Enjoy Milano this evening. Greg says on Facebook, the Russians, Germans, Spanish, Portuguese, Brazilians, Argentina, etc. are all in on this to make us boycott the World Cup because they know we're going to win it. Very good, Greg. Goodness me. I remember when I was young, people saying Scotland were going to win the World Cup in 1978. I'd thought we probably got to have as much chance of that. David says, what the hell is wrong with the transition deal? There will be consequences to Brexit, so a transition deal will surely help. Leave voters don't own Brexit. No, but what they did do, David, is give an instruction to government. We want to leave. And we certainly did not vote for, 9 months to trigger Article 50, 2 years of Article 50, and a transition period that will last, well, they're saying up to 2 years. I'll bet you it's up until the next general election. Catty is getting angry. She says, we Brexiteers are not speaking up loudly enough. We need to be storming Parliament and marching, otherwise we'll lose. We must start voicing loud and clear before the end of this year. Well, Catty, I do think you're quite right that we should be voicing, and if there's a march for Brexit, do you know what? I'll be on it. I don't know how much good it'll do us, but words like storming Parliament, no, can't quite go along with that, I'm afraid. A little bit too much. Let's go to Michael in Muswell Hill. Michael, I was there today. I could almost reach out and touch Mr. Juncker. Are they being reasonable with us?
Well, to be honest, Nigel, I thought I must have missed some of the news because I really couldn't understand why, say, the Brexiteers who are ringing up are so angry. Because the facts as I know it are, we voted to leave, they didn't ask us to leave, and then we said we were going to leave on a date, and then we said, oh no, we haven't got our act together, we'd like some more time, can we please stay in for another couple of years? And they said, yes, you can stay in for another couple of years. All we're asking is that you abide by the same rules that everybody else in the club is going to have to abide by. We're not asking you to abide any more rules than anybody else. Just use the same rules that everybody else has. Now, I can't see what's unreasonable about that, Nigel. I really can't.
I tell you what, Michael, here's my view. I don't think the Brexiteers are particularly angry with Juncker or Barnier because they just expect this is what they're going to say anyway. I think the anger is directed towards a British government. I think the anger is directed towards a Prime Minister who stands up and says things like Brexit means Brexit, then tells us she wants a transition deal, then tells us we can't negotiate a free trade deal or take back control of our borders for at least 5 or 6 years after we voted Brexit. That, Michael, I think, is where the frustration's targeted.
I understand that, Nigel, and you're a put yourself out as a really straightforward man who can give a straight answer to a straight question. I'd like to ask you a straight question.
Go on.
Do you genuinely think that Barnier, by saying to the British, you need to abide by the same rules that everybody else is abiding by as long as you're in the club, do you genuinely believe that statement makes him unfair? Yes or no?
Well, I think, Michael, we're supposed to be leaving the club. And I think what Barnier sees is that any trade deal of any kind in the future must mean full regulatory alignment. And frankly, Michael, that would be nuts for us to sign up to it. Barnier, and I quoted this earlier, Michael, I was there this morning with him, he said, we must preserve our European Union and preserve our single market. So for him, this is about politics, not about economics, and I think they're very scared over it. Michael, I thank you for your call. You listen to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It's now 7:48. The terms of our transition period were laid bare today by Juncker and Barnier, and they were not holding back. They were making it perfectly clear. And you might argue, we've heard all this stuff before, but it could not have been clearer today. That is what, Theresa May's expected to sign up to next week, and that would include the continued free movement of people. I'm not sure Brexit voters are happy with that, but it's my contention their anger is not with Mr Juncker, it's actually with the British government. That is how I see it. Before we get back to that, Hillary Clinton, one of my favourite people, is on a trip to India at the moment, and she's talking about her failed 2016 bid for president. And surprise, surprise, guess what? She's blaming racism. Yeah, and misogyny. That's why she lost. In fact, she said over the weekend that one of the reasons she lost is that white women don't stand up to the men in their lives who are pressuring them to vote for Donald Trump, and that's why 52% of white women voted Trump. Oh, please, put a sock in it. Get over it. You lost. This is just too awful. It's ghastly. In fact, Hillary, you're whinging almost as much as Edward Heath did after Margaret Thatcher beat him for the Tory leadership. It really is boring, but I don't suppose she'll stop, and probably she'll pop back into the London studios on her way home. So what does Mrs May do at this summit next Thursday? Does she sign up to this agreement, believing if she does, she'll keep the numbers in Parliament that she needs? Is she risking alienating potentially millions of Conservative voters? David is calling from East Finchley. Good evening.
Hi, Nigel. Good to speak with you again. My view is, I think the transition period is a good thing. Brexit is happening. You've won. Even those of us who voted to stay in Europe, we now accept that, and we're just trying to make it the best possible exit. There's many ways to do it, and one of them could be this transition period. And you're an ex-businessman, used to trade in commodities. You understand business, and you have to. And I'm sure you do. The British economy was really strong when we're currently in Europe, but when we were not coming out of Europe, we were first out of recession, we had the lowest unemployment, the fastest growth. There was lots of good things because we were the gateway, I believe, into Europe. So it was an easy, business came to us.
But David, us being the gateway into Europe is a fairly small part of our economy.
True. Europe and the rest of the world, there's all of that to look forward to. But what I'm looking at is the shock. Businesses don't like immediate change. So Brexit is happening. Let's just slow things down. 2 years. 2 years in the bigger picture is not a long time. When they're rewriting history books and they'll be studying what you did, Nigel, 2 years is a blip. It's nothing. So in that 2 year period, we will be able to...
David, let me just make one thing clear. If we leave the Treaty of Rome at midnight on the 29th of March next year, that will be a major historic change. And you're absolutely right about that. And that does, in terms of change, it does dwarf any concerns I've got. But my problem, David, is, and I haven't even mentioned this yet, but, you know, Barnier today was talking about fishing. We have to continue to have reciprocal fishing rights. The problem, David, is that we may well finish up getting Brexit in name only and not being able to take advantage of the things that Brexit offers us.
So Nigel, as a pro-European, I now accept we're leaving, and we've got to make the best of it, however that is. And, you know, I listened to your radio talk about the fisheries, etc., and obviously all these things need to change. But the way I see it, and again, we don't know what Theresa May is going to sign and what amendments are going to be made. And the Europeans, I mean, you've been there, they talk the talk, they're going to be very hardline. Well, they're actually sitting down in the rooms. They may be slightly more appeasable. But the idea is during that 2-year period, theoretically, we will be able to start negotiating these new trade agreements with the various partners around the world, including the one which we will hope to have, the free trade agreement, which we will have with Europe, obviously with certain caveats, etc. And these will come in to play after the transition period is ended. And I would assume, you must admit, you cannot just write a new free trade agreement in one day. It just doesn't happen. These things take years.
It takes months. It takes months. You know, the Australians, from start to finish, with the Americans, from sitting down, beginning the negotiation, did it in, I think, 9-10 months. So these things can't be done quickly. But, David, what I never bought was the David Cameron, it would take 10 years or 20 years or goodness knows what he was saying. David, let me just finish by asking you one thing. When you look, and take Brexit out of it for a minute, but you look at the Italian result and what's happening across Europe. I mean, do you think the European Union needs to fundamentally change, or it's going to fall over?
Okay, well, I lived in Italy for 4 years when I was a kid, and Italy's a funny place. The north-south divide. There's real poverty in the south, and you know, when I lived there, communism was was real hardline, sort of left views. So Italy's actually taken the brunt, should we say, of the North African migration, which has hit their shores, and really they do not have the resources to deal with it. And of course, they've got this massive. Well, they've always run a slightly higher.
But do you think, David? Do you think, David, there'll be a European Union in its current form in 10 years' time?
I think the European Union will have to reform itself. And
well, so do I. David, I'm going to leave you. I'm going to leave you to get one last caller in. Allegra from Cambridge, who's a new caller to this show. What should Mrs May do next week, Allegra?
Well, okay, I'm basically actually calling to respond to one of your other callers. He said about, we should be storming Parliament, which obviously you disagree with. I don't think we should be storming Parliament, but the reason I think nobody is really doing anything in that respect, not storming Parliament, but, protesting, banners in the streets and stuff, is embarrassment. People are embarrassed. I'm a little bit embarrassed. I mean, I voted for Brexit, happily, and I kind of tried to share that a little bit on my social media, and I have been
abused
by people I've known for 10 years and have considered friends over it.
Isn't it funny, Allegra, that those of us that believe in Brexit get abused by people? Well, don't be too embarrassed about it, Allegra. You're part of the majority. I've got to let you go. I'm sorry that was short. We've run out of time. Finally, Alice says on Facebook, we never win the blooming World Cup. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC. I'm back tomorrow night at 7. Tonight at 10 o'clock it's Ian Collins, but up next, it's Beverly Turner.
Thank you, Nigel.